Well, welcome everybody. We have Luke and Bill, EVW Refs. Welcome Luke, Bill. Good to see you again. It's only
Hey,
maybe a
Dex.
week.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah. So I think one of the main things we wanna to bring you guys on is to, well, one, to get to know you guys a little bit better, and two, make you feel more part of the company as well. Oh, we have Robert Baxter coming in online as well. So let's put Robert here. There we
Okay.
go. Hey, Robert.
Trying to get out of the sun.
How's everybody
Uh,
doing?
How's it going, Ryan?
good.
Good, good. Thanks for.
So where are you guys right now?
I'm in my house.
And where is that? So
I'm
people
sorry.
know.
Western South Dakota, the Black Hills of South Dakota.
Oh, okay. Uh, Bill, where are you at?
Bill's in California, Southern California, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that was a question for me. Yeah,
Oh,
actually, no, I'm actually in Central California, about right in the center of the state.
Oh, that's right.
okay.
So your tournaments
Yeah,
are in
close.
Southern California. You're not.
Yeah, it's close, about 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Great.
And Dexter, are you in Malaysia right now?
Yes, that's where I am currently. Moving about a little bit, but yeah, I'm still floating around Asia and always returning back to Malaysia. So, all right, let's get going. And here's the first question from Beto. Guys, can you please answer, was there any rule changes implemented or discussed for EVW 18, specifically regarding the decline humerus?
No, there wasn't. That rule has been in place for at a minimum the last year, if not year and a half. That if the humerus is in a declining position in the neutral or losing side of the table, it is a foul. And that's been in place for quite some time now. I don't know the exact time of when it got put in, but it's been a while, at least a year.
I'd concur.
It appears as if maybe some of our people have frozen.
Oh, Dexter? I think Dexter's frozen here. Well, maybe let's start. Luke, how do you want to do this? Do you want to? I think Bill wanted to talk about the decline humerus call, and Bill, do you want to go ahead and just dive right into that? I'm sure that's one of that'll be
Yeah,
coming up anyway.
are we talking about the last match, Rob?
Sorry.
Yeah, with not the last match. Yeah, with Alex Kardashev and Devin Larratt, their left-handed match.
Yeah. So, the first thing I want to say is, the East versus West, they hired the best referees in the world for a reason. To give a fair match to the arm wrestler, which is what they expect, and for the referees to proctor it in the fairest fashion as possible. So, the management side of the East versus West, they allow us to do our job because we're the subject matter experts on it. Now, when we start looking at Alex Kardashev, I spoke with him the other day. I spoke with him again today after reviewing the video, and it was pretty blatant that Devin was in decline, and my focus was on Alex's shoulder and his elbow. He's such a big man, and his shoulders just cross take up that whole table that I actually fell short on calling Devin's decline immediately. And that was one of the things that really bugged me after I reviewed the video. My focus was on his shoulder, his elbow. At one point, Hristo was pointing, and I really didn't know what he was pointing at, just for the simple fact that, you know, I was looking at focusing on Alex more than I was Devin. But again, after reviewing the videos, I fell short big time, and I had to let Alex know that, and I apologized to him. I also sent him a little video stating that there was actually two different mistakes that we noticed on Devin and Alex's match. And one of them was there was so much stuff going on the table, but they both got a warning. And I called the match on Devin for the decline, gave the win to Alex, and at the same time, Hristo said Alex's elbow came out of the pocket, so it was a coincidental foul, meaning that nothing counted. I think that's kind of what threw us off a little bit, because it happened more than once. And then when they were tied up again, Alex had a foul on his elbow, which Hristo called, and gave the match to Devin, which indeed it was only one foul for Alex, not for two. So this was a very horrible mistake on the referee's part, me being one of them. You know, we have two referees for a reason, and the head referee manages and starts the match. After the match is started, each referee has their own side of the table to manage, and both sides are just as important as the start. And again, you know, after the review on it, you know, we notice a few things. Whenever you're refereeing at these high levels, you know, the pressure, the spontaneous calls. If you're focusing on one side, this was a huge lesson learned for me, because I've refereed hundreds of high-level matches. And when the referee, after the start, you should be scanning that whole table from front to side, top to back, arm wrestler to arm wrestler, and not be so focused on a specific waiting for a foul to happen. Again, it was lessons learned. You know, Hristo and I both realized what happened. This was, of course, after the event and looking at the videos. And I just hope, you know, according to Alex, you know, he says he's okay with that. He knows it wasn't intentional, and he knows it wasn't deliberate. And, you know, like when I spoke with him, you know, we're hoping them two guys get to see each other on the table again, because that one mistake, which was very big as far as I'm concerned, could have changed the whole dynamics of that match if it was called properly. And, you know, I know East versus West, they rely on their referees to do the right thing and make the right calls. And again, man, I even hate to admit it, because it knocks my pride down to the ground that I was involved with a match that we had some mistakes on. But, you know, like Luke said earlier, I think the decline rule's been in the East versus West for some time. Ingen was very adamant when he set that rule. When it declines, there's no warning. You just give them a foul automatically. And again, reviewing the video and the content that I had looked at, I deserve to be fired as far as I'm concerned, because it happened and it shouldn't have, and it was obvious, you know. So that apology went out to Alex, and that was a huge mistake on both of us parts. But I'll own it. You know, I don't want to look at Hristo as his mistake. I'm
Bill, you're great. You've been a great rep.
Appreciate it. But I can tell you, um, there's some checks and balances that of course, Luce and I have talked about, and closing the gap so something like that doesn't ever happen again. As far as the counts, the playback action, that kind of stuff, we've got some pretty good ideals to eliminate and mitigate that from ever happening again.
Just
What are some of the, some of the changes if you were to propose? What would that look like? Prevent
Well,
things.
yeah, and it's common for the referee, the head ref, to announce the calls before you start the match. Basically, what I mean is, and using Devin as Alex, for example, Devin one warning, Alex one warning, grip. Um, if something happens and they come back before the start again, Alex one foul, one warning, Devin one warning, grip. So making a call before each match, that will solidify the count to be accurate every time you start the match. The other thing, we had some discrepancy on the playback action. I know we had some technical stuff going on over there, but I've ref some other pay per view events before where the playback action was in control of the referee, not so much the viewers the spectators or the viewers aspect, but more so the referee. So when the match is going, the referee that's not at the table, he could be viewing that match on the video screen, and it would almost be like like a video referee, you might say. But that video referee is not making any calls. That video referee is watching the match, and when the head referee makes that call, that video referee could give him the signal, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever communications we set up. So we've got a third set of eyes. And then if we need to play something back, because things happen so fast on the table, the referee, that's the video referee, he's in control of that stick where he could go back and forth without having to communicate with the whole staff. Them couple of things, if we were to have them in place, we could probably eliminate all missed calls, all mistake calls, all missed calls, and confirm after the call has been made. So
the other,
go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing that having that referee on the screen would help with is if there is a protest, when the head ref walks over to view, that ref that's watching will probably already have an idea of what the answer is. So we'll be able to dramatically speed up the review process, the protest aspect of it, so that doesn't tend to drag on and make the event longer than it really needs to be. We're also aware of the show aspect, and that we need things moving along and not dragging on and stuff. And there's really nothing that drags on worse than referees looking at a screen, especially if the screen isn't working, to try and figure out a protest, or having way too many people over by the protest discussing it. It's really a one or two person position. Just the other thing before we get too far past what Bill was talking about earlier, when you referee at this level, I know myself, Bill, I'm not 100% positive for Hristo, but I'm very confident that it's also the case for him. We go back and review our matches, just like athletes do, to see what they can improve on. We go back and review our matches. It is not uncommon, even in normal run-of-the-mill tournaments, for me to review matches, or to call up Bill and say, hey, I saw this match that you refed. What happened here? And vice versa. I mean, between myself and Bill Collins and Leonard Harkless and Tim Talmadge and Sean Hancock and Keith Michelle, I mean, we really strive to hold each other accountable to the standards that we expect of ourselves. We're not just showing up on the day of an event and going, hey, let's ref again. I mean, we work on this year round to be better, to hopefully provide what the fans are after, which is a great match.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. This question is for Luke. Andrew Volkov. He says, could Luke say about the Levan situation, specifically about the part where the refs didn't watch certain parts of replay, heard the rumors somewhere on the internet, not sure how true they are.
Okay, so as far as that whole deal went with the Matt Mask and Irakli match, it was the very last, well, not the very last, but the pin call that I made for Matt Mask pinning Irakli that caused Levan and Irakli to be upset. Now, they were already strapped together, so before I can do anything, I have to unstrap them. It's a safety issue for the athletes. So that's important. I can't finish a call. I can't declare winner. There's a lot of things that you don't do as a referee before you take that strap off. And as soon as I made the pin call, in my head, I was making a note that I had to review that on the screen because I was not comfortable with the angle that I was at when I made the call. I wasn't 100% certain when I made the call. Now, unfortunately, emotions run high. Levan came and gave me a little tap in the shoulder. I told him to go back to his corner. He went back to his corner. I reviewed it. We were able to see what I wanted to see, so I don't know about not reviewing everything in the match. That's the first I've heard that on that particular match. We went up, we reran it. It was not a pin, we reran it. Matt won the next match. So Matt was ultimately the winner. And just with all the Levan stuff, I spoke with Levan several times. He apologized several times. He's as aware of anybody that you don't touch the ref in any sport. It's just not done. I had the authority at that point to disqualify Irakli from the match for unsportsmanlike from his corner. I didn't feel that was necessary, so I didn't exercise that. That is one of the beautiful parts of having some referee discretion, is we can make a decision on that. Is that really necessary, or was this just what happened? As far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure as far as Levan is concerned, him and I are good. And like I said, the match was rerun because it was not a pin. Like I said, I wasn't positive of my angle. That's why we were going to review it anyway. And yeah, that's the Levan thing. It's made for some fun Facebook and stuff out there, and I think it's drawn some attention to the sport. But I would just as soon not go toe to toe with giants anymore.
That's good. There are also quite a bit of questions going as far back in Georgia. Robert, should we address this right now, or should we save that for a different time? Because
if it's applicable here, yeah, but otherwise, let's save it for a different time and just stick to, I think, Chicago and going forward. I think going forward is what we're really focused on, is what we're going to do to solve issues. And Bill has mentioned things, Luke has mentioned things. I think that's the most important, is where do we go from here? How do we make things better? And this is all, if Ingen and I can come to a resolution, and I think we're pretty close, but then it goes back to Ingen, and then he decides what to do. But in the meantime, I think we have to move forward and address the issues that we had, or that we have, and not every issue needs to be talked about, because refs are human. Humans are going to make mistakes. That's kind of in every sport. But if it's something pretty big, we want to deal with it, and we want to get solutions to keep that from happening in the future.
right.
So in answer to this question, in Texas, we implemented a new system of you have 30 seconds to get your grip. Once you go to a referee's grip, you stay in a referee's grip for the remainder of the match. All of the rounds after that will stay in a referee's grip. That was made in an effort to speed things up. We know setups take a long time. The problem is from a fan standpoint versus an athlete standpoint, the athlete understands how important that setup is. There is just as much of the match that takes place in that setup is after the word go. So to just, force a grip right away or go back to the wall, set grip days where you really didn't have an opportunity to get your grip, that fundamentally changes our sport. And the whole goal with a rule is safety, and then to make it easily repeatable and callable and precise, to not have it adversely affect other parts, and to not fundamentally change arm wrestling. And so, the other thing that's asked a lot is, well, why don't we just start every match in a strap? Well, because that does fundamentally change the sport. And that's why we don't do that. But as far as speeding up the setups, I really don't know at this point how you could get the setups much faster than what we've done at this point. Something that could potentially help there with the fans is having or encouraging our commentators to, during the setup, talk more about the strategy and open that door to the spectator so that they understand why they're doing what they're doing. But as far as from a referee standpoint, I think we're about as fast in the setup as we're going to get.
Let me jump in on that too, Luke. And it's been discussed many times about how stringent do you want to be on this setup? Because realistically, people are paying to watch these matches. My personal opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, it's better to take an extra half a minute to get the match set up than to foul them out and not see the match at all. So there's two different things that we look at. You want to start these matches sooner, we're going to have to foul people out because they are moving, they're doing their dance. But before the starting of the match, we make sure that they're in the center of the table and their wrists are straight and everything looks fair. Now, when we start looking at, okay, let's be stringent on it and hold them to the gun to this 30 sec or to the after the 30-second getting their grips, the referee's grip. I'm telling you, Luke could vouch for this. I'm sure is just about every match that happens on the table, these guys could get fouled out if we want to hold our gun strictly to the rolls and not have any flexibility with it. So, I think, and I think the delay after a match happens, the 90 seconds, that like Luke said, that's a perfect example. That's when you could burn up some commentating time to maybe even, talk about the match or the last match or create some kind of dialogue with the fans. Just so their attention is not so much on that. But I agree. Sometimes these matches take a little bit longer, but do we want to foul the guys out or do we want to see the match? It's a double-edged sword there.
We are getting a lot of questions about running fouls. Do we want to comment on your opinions on those?
I'm happy to comment on running fouls. So here's one of the challenges of refereeing at the level of East versus West, King of the Table, PAL, any of the big leagues with the elite arm wrestlers in the sport. Okay. So you've got your rule set, and virtually every referee has been trained through the WAF rule set. At their base, any of the top referees in the world right now started with a WAF rule set, which is very strict, very precise. There's no gray area. It's just boom. And it's done that way because when you are running a tournament that takes 7 days and has 12 tables on the stage, you have to move things along and you have to be that strict so that matches don't drag on and those things. Now, WAF is not really set up to be spectator pay-per-view friendly. So with the advent of pay-per-view and super matches and everything, there's been an adaptation of rule set to make it more viewer friendly. And that's the constant conversation that people like myself and Robert and Dexter and Bill are always having is, well, what happens if we adjust this rule? Well, what's the ripple effect over here? Does it have an adverse effect somewhere else? A great example, and I'm not saying it's an adverse effect, but it's an effect. The elbow pad for East versus West is just a little bit bigger all the way around than the standard pad. So it's giving a little bit more flexibility of movement on the table. But the ripple effect of that is we have shoulder across center calls way more often than we ever used to, because you can move forward further on the table now, and so it opened up a new foul. It was made bigger to helpfully get rid of elbow fouls. It probably reduced elbow fouls to some degree, but it opened up shoulder across the center fouls. The problem here is there are very, very few referees in the world that can ref well under multiple rule sets or adapted rule sets, because a lot of reffing is muscle memory. Then you add in the fact that we have to work with a rule set that is just not quite mainstream. You make a split-second decision. You have to see everything, which, as we know, can't be done. And now, if you look at running fouls, not only do I have to assess, is it a foul? Do I make the call? Well, is it a running foul? Is it a standard foul? Do I stop the match? It adds a whole new layer of complexity. And anytime you add a new layer of complexity, you add a new layer for mistakes. So I am personally, in this setting, not a fan of the running fouls. In Arm Wars, where Neil uses them, he's got a different setup. It's a little bit different style altogether, and it works okay there. We did running fouls at the Monster Factory, and one of the biggest struggles at the Monster Factory was being able to find a downside ref that could consistently handle running fouls, because it adds one more layer of complexity. So I'll leave it there. Running fouls are great in the right circumstance. I don't think they're a good fit for East versus West for those reasons.
Running fouls. There's a good and bad with the running fouls. Luke just explained the bad, the confusion. But on the good side, it does keep the match going. But when you start looking at the running fouls, when I first started with East versus West, I think I refereed, or excuse me, King of the Table. I think I've refereed seven different events for them, and there was 5 different rule changes, and 4 of them was on the running foul. So the confusion for the spectators, confusion for the commentators, confusion for the referees. It's not a real easy task to adapt to rule changes when we start talking running fouls. If he had something solid, I think the running foul does have its place, so you don't stop the match, but it will get a little bit more confusing for the spectators and open up the door for a lot of questions that we'd have to answer as well. But like I say, on the good side, you get a couple of guys up there grinding away. One has the elbow hop, or one elbow comes up the front or back of the pocket. The match stops and restarts. It's not a subjective call. Where on the running foul, some things may be a little subjective that we'd have to deal with. But fine tuning a really good running foul process, like Luke said, it's a big adapt that the referees would have to get used to. It's doable, but what set of running fouls are you going to run with? Because I've seen probably 5 of them already.
Rebecca
I love Rebecca.
She clarified, they got rid of running fouls at the Monster Factory.
Yep.
Here's another, just to put it to bed, because there are now more people joining in. Devin has suggested potential rule changes. Potential changes to the rule. Has there been any discussion about rule changes for EVW 19? Now, to clarify, prior to EVW doing a collaboration with Brian Shaw, there was discussions prior to to that, But with the collaboration, it is made known that the EVW rules will stand, will take place for the pay-per-view event. However, for the open tournament that the Shaw Classic is hosting, that is a separate matter yet to be discussed. But for now, the main event will not utilize any rule changes unless specifically announced. And if Ingen is back, he will also be part of that conversation, and refs
So
will all be aware of that.
just to clarify a little bit even further there, Dexter, I was part of the conversations with the Shaw Classic with Brian on potential rule changes for the Shaw Classic, what could work, what couldn't. We threw around some really neat ideas that I think would have been neat to test. But Devin even stated today on his channel in no way to misunderstand it that yes, rule changes were talked about for the Shaw Classic, but as soon as it became a collaboration, there is no intent to have any rule changes. It's an East versus West event. So even Devin stated that on his channel today. So yeah, no changes. The Shaw is now an EVW.
Excellent. I'll take this. Somebody's wondering when they can expect rules to be added to the website. They appreciate transparency, uh, but they want concrete rules published. So just FYI for everybody, we have the rules on our website currently. However, it's unpublished for the reasons that we are hoping to get some verification and buy-in from everybody, and to make sure that there's no grammatical errors, and we are thinking of all possibilities, and everything will be documented. Once that has been vetted and proofread by everybody on the team, with the refs, and if Ingen's back, he'll definitely have a big part in reviewing those. Robert, I'm then we'll publish all the rules on the website, because I think it makes sense for everybody to, especially those that are learning and growing in the sport. They would like to know exactly how much they can push themselves and what is allowed and what isn't. So it makes sense. So stay tuned. That will happen. That will be the one of the next new projects that I'll be working on. What about this comment? We need to stop allowing pullers to foul when in a bad position. That make no sense. Can maybe either of you educate all of us about this comment?
Yeah, so define bad position. It's pretty tough to do. What might look like a bad position to me
Look,
might not be a
look,
bad position.
look, I think just reading between the lines here, I'm thinking if the opponent is in a bad position, not so much a break arm position, but in a losing position, and he can't recover from it, he lifts his elbow.
Right, but that's subjective. Michael Todd looks like he's in a losing position 98% of the time he's in a match. If he fouls there, are we just supposed to have him lose? Just because it looks bad doesn't make it bad. Just because it looks like you have the advantage doesn't mean you have the advantage. So I think that's why.
Yeah, I think in this particular question, and I could be reading more into it, is if you drag me down to the pad and I'm in a bad position where I know I can't recover from it, I lift my elbow up it's a professional foul, basically what it is. I think that's
100% what he's talking about. It's just, it adds more subjectivity, and there shouldn't be more subjectivity. I shouldn't be responsible for knowing what your intent in your mind is when I'm making a call. That's why it's a professional elbow foul. Every arm wrestler does it at the right time. I've done it. Right. I know Robert's done it. I would guess Bill has done it. It's just part of the sport. And personally, from an athlete spectator standpoint, I think it's one of the things that makes the sport even more fun and dynamic.
Well, just so you know, Luke, I've never done it. I just want to.
We can discuss that offline, Robert.
Yeah.
That's because Robert never loses.
No, I lose, but I want to keep it fair.
Okay, I know this was answered, but just to rephrase what Luke mentioned, that it is his discretion on what disciplines to do while on the stage. Is that correct, Luke?
It's my discretion to give an unsportsmanlike foul or disqualification. As far as is there league repercussions? That's obviously up to you and Robert. I spoke with Robert about it at length, and I think we agreed that there didn't need to be any type of league repercussions other than just the league reinforcing the fact that hey, we don't do that. And like I said, Levan came and apologized to me at least 3 different times. He knew that emotions got the best of him. It happens. Just time to move forward from that one. Levan's a great guy. He's a phenomenal champion. So I think we can let that one go to bed.
Yeah. This is another question by Vansh Upal. Cool. Luke fell off. There's a lot of confusion about the King's move. Pretty sure the rule is about humorous angle and not keeping the shoulder above the pin pad. Correct? Thoughts?
So Dex, let me jump in on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. So the WF rules and the EVW follows the WF with some modifications, and then their rule, that's what they talk about, the shoulder, keeping the shoulder above the pin pad. But some guys have shoulders like football helmets, so it's not all the same. Where the humorous angle would be consistent through every puller, no matter how big their shoulders are. So the King's move, of course, when they drop in the King's move, we're dealing with the humorous. And like we talked about with Devin's match with Alex Gradecha, his humorous was in a decline. And, the delay on my part just was in Devin. It was in Devin's favor, not intentionally, but it's easier to gauge the humorous than it is the shoulder. Because doesn't matter how big that shoulder is, when that humerus starts to drop, we need to make that call immediately.
Okay. Any add-on thoughts, Luke?
No, I think Bill covered it very well. It's really a pretty simple rule to call at this point. It's just the trickiest part is making the decision on if it's neutral or on the winning side, because that can be a very narrow margin. I think when people say it doesn't get called soon enough, in most cases, it's because while it's happening, we as a referee feel that they're on the winning side. They're not neutral, so it's not illegal. If it moves back a little bit is when we make that call. I would say that's probably the majority of the outside view looking in of why it doesn't get called soon enough. Generally speaking, the head ref and the downside ref have the absolute best seats in the house to see everything. I just like another comment I saw in there is pins get called too high all the time, meaning they're not actually crossing the plane or touching the pad. I would encourage you to go to Bob Brown Arm Wrestling and watch the video that he put out about 2 years showing how much camera angle changes whether or not a pin is a pin. And you got to remember, guys, we're sitting right there looking at the pad, looking at the line, looking at the wrist line. We get way more right than we get wrong.
Excellent. Next we have, going back again, it's a Devin question. And just to put things to bed, and just to get you guys to say, has Devin actively influencing the rules to gain an unfair advantage? I think it's a flat no. It's a flat no.
I'm going to say absolutely not. And I can give a great example from behind the scenes there in Texas when I did the rules meeting and we talked about a referee's grip. One of the consistent arguments that Devin has about the referee's grip is when he's told to move his elbow. because he says there's, you can't tell me where to put my elbow. Well, in fact, we can. It's written in the rules, and I know that because I wrote that rule for East versus West. So I know it's there. I explained to him that we have to have even webbing and we have to be in the center of the table. Yes, he can lower his hand instead of moving his elbow, but we still have to be center. So it's a combination of both. As soon as that was explained to Devin in that way, he went, okay, perfect. What more can I ask for? And he went on. He didn't try to influence the refs. He didn't try to get the rule changed for that event. It didn't happen.
Well, and if you didn't cave to Levan, I'm pretty sure you won't cave to Devin. Levan's your face. Let's see. There's another, just an open-ended one. Maybe we'll start with Bill. Bill, if you could do one rule change, what would that be to help arm wrestling as a whole? And then we'll go to Luke.
That's interesting. I think the way that Ingen had set up the rules with a modified WAF rule seems to work. I think it's the people proctoring them that needs to make it happen as they're written. Not a whole lot of rules, I would say, to change if you guys want to see the match go on. So as far as I'm concerned, subjectively, the WF rules, modified WF rules, the way we got them, is not a bad deal, because there is a couple of fudge factors that the modifications did, and that's one of them with the elbow hop. Some people think that an elbow hop is from one side of the pad to the elbow or to the other side of the pad. It's impossible to do that without some kind of position gain. When we start looking at elbow hop, that means, on the start, it's up and down, or if they're in a match, that elbow comes up for a fraction of a second and back down without any position gain. Them are a lot of benefited factors to the WF rules, because as Luke mentioned earlier, they're so stringent and they're so tight. They're easy to referee. When we start adding add-ons to it, them are the rules that are always questionable. As far as I'm concerned, Luke, you could jump in on this. I think the way Inga's got them rules set up is not bad at all.
No, I don't think the current rule set is bad at all. But if I were to make a change to improve supermatch arm wrestling, first of all, I would love to be able to claim credit for this entire idea on my own, and I can't do it because it wasn't just my idea. It was first brought and then discussed in a room with Neil Pickup, Brian Shaw, and Devin. And that would be to add a consent light to the table. All the time in matches, we have where maybe I'm carved in just a little bit. My opponent doesn't care. My shoulder's out just a little bit, and I'm saying, just say go. And my opponent's just say go. We just want to go, but the referee needs our shoulder square. The referee needs this, the referee needs that. That's the way the rules are. That's the way it should be. But if somewhere on my side of the table, on my pin pad, on my peg, on the side of the table, if I was happy, I could hit it and a light on the table came on. And if my opponent's light came on, the referee says, don't move, go. Consent. I'm happy, he's happy, let us arm wrestle. I would love that. I think it would make the sport more dynamic. We're constantly trying to square the shoulders. The problem is when we made the pads from center to offset, biologically speaking, squared shoulders don't work very well anymore. So, there should be almost the same allowance in shoulder square as what the pads move, if you really want to be square as arm wrestlers versus square to the table. So that's just a small thing, again, where one rule changed something else that wasn't thought about, the consent light. And again, I would love to take full credit for that. Can't do it because it was and that idea could very well have initiated with Devin. I don't know who first came up with that concept, but we had a long discussion about it. I've had long discussions with Brian and Neil about it. I think that could be a really interesting way to move the sport forward on the elite super match level. Not in a tournament setting at all. That would be awful.
and this is a follow-up question. Why do do we see shoulders turn inwards instead of squared onto the table?
I guess I don't really understand the question because the referee's job is to make sure the shoulders are square to the table, not inward. Now, if you're in further, that's fine. You just can't be turned out. So if they mean why is allowed to be inward versus not allowed to be facing out, that if that's really what that person means, I'm not sure. But we're just truly looking for square.
Um, Here's another one. Uh, Bigger elbow pads for super heavyweights.
They already made the pad a little bit bigger. I think at that point you have to look at a completely different table for the Giants if you're going to go that route. Otherwise, you're just going to add in more of the ripple effect problems. If I've got a bigger elbow pad, now I'm going to get called for shoulder across center that much more. And I mean, contact to your shoulder in different ways. I mean, that's a call that is very seldom ever made is contact with your hand. But I had to make that call against Wagner. He started pushing on his hand with his chin. I mean, I think it's the first call I've ever made for pushing with your chin. I've made shoulder contact calls, but never chin contact calls. I mean, it happens, but I mean, at a point, if we keep getting the true giants of the world arm wrestling, there might have to be a dimensional change to the entire table for the Giants. But I don't think just making the elbow pad a little bit bigger for him is going to matter.
Yeah, I think to fix one problem with the bigger elbow pads, you're creating another one. Because we know that, the arm wrestlers are going to use every inch or every millimeter of that elbow pad to their advantage. So if you create a bigger elbow pad, I think we're going to be creating more shoulders crossing over the center of the table because they got more surface to work with. So, creating, trying to fix one problem could be creating another when we start talking bigger elbow pads.
Great. What about this comment? 3 fouls,
We
not 2.
we've had that discussion. I know Robert and I have had that discussion at length. If we went to 3 fouls instead of 2, I would be an advocate for going back to movement in a referee's grip being a foul, not a warning anymore. So it's kind of got to be one or the other. Otherwise, again, the matches just drag on and drag on and drag on. And the more latitude you give for fouls and warnings, the more control you take away from the referee, and the more control that the referee doesn't have, the more chaos you have on the table, and the less you actually get to watch arm wrestling.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Luke because right now we gave him the flexibility. That's one thing that Egan did with the rules was, moving in a referee's grip is not a foul where all the other rule sets are. So basically, they're getting more than 3 fouls when you start talking about referee's grip because you move, you get a foul. You move again, you get you move, you get a warning, you move, you get a foul, you move, you get a warning, you move, you get a foul. So, there is actually 3 fouls in that referee type of setup. Now, not for the rest of the matches, but for the referees, it is. I mean, for the referee grip, there is. So, I'd have to agree with Luke on that one.
Okay, so
Right.
somebody just put this question up, and I don't know if you've seen it, but it says some of the worst refereeing of East versus West ever. Way too many calls made. So is it a referee problem if we're making the calls, or is it the athlete problem for not following the rules? Is it my fault I'm making the call? I don't think so. Whoever put that. I mean, let's think that through a little bit.
That's interesting one. Here's another one, and maybe to get your opinion by Rich Riser. What about an elbow pad with a little raised border so it's not easily slipped out?
I'm a big fan.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm a big fan. Bill remembers pulling in cupped pads. I don't because I'm not as old as Bill. But I have seen prototypes of a square pad with a 1/4 inch lip all the way around it. I've had the opportunity to arm wrestle on those pads. It eliminates the elbow bobble call. If your elbow comes above that line, that's the call. Anything below that, you don't even have to worry about. So it takes discretion out of the picture. The biggest problem with that pad has been getting it built in a way that it can stand up to the rigors of arm wrestling.
I agree.
But it's
Okay.
a phenomenal option of a solution. I love the lip around the pad idea.
Uh, Luke, this is one of the supporters who had the same idea as you. Blame the rest for too many calls and blame them for no calls. That's essentially what you're saying.
Well,
In the
MC, I
JV.
hate being a ref too, but here we are.
You know, to answer that question too is the referee calls what he sees. The referees are going to miss the calls. I mean, it's natural. We're going to miss some calls, but if there's a call that happens, there's a reason for it because we've seen it. So that's part of the game.
Yep, there's a lot of support for you guys out here. Let's see. Next
Well, that's a
question.
nice change as a ref.
There is a lot of support for you guys actually, but usually the negative guys usually are a little bit more vocal, and so it kind of skews the perspective of what the
Yeah.
the fans and attendees are actually, that their true sentiments are. This one is another easy question to just discuss.
Yeah, agreed. And plus, what happens if you've got a short, fat guy that's super heavyweight?
Yeah, that's going to be tough.
Yep.
So maybe a follow-up question for me is that the risers only currently have two settings, two height settings. Would it be practical to have a little bit more than two?
To what, Dexter? Say that again.
Two height settings, more than two height settings for the riser. It's either high or it's down, right?
Oh, for the riser you're talking about.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, usually it's been determined when a person can use a riser and when they can't. And it's been set years ago where if your belt line is at least at that tabletop, you can't use a riser. Some people still do it though. But then again, it doesn't give you a dimension change on the tabletop itself. By using a riser where your belt is above the table, it's going to bring your shoulder a lot easier to cross over that center line. So in order for that to happen, if there's going to be, and Luke touched on this earlier, if that's going to happen, it needs to be a whole new table design, and everybody uses that same design. And if they have to use a riser to get up to the table, we need to have a standard on what is allowed and what's not. And the only way you can measure that thing is by the belt line, because like Luke said earlier, you may have a 300-pound 5'3" guy and a 300-pound 6'5" guy. So the dynamics of the individuals definitely not going to be the same.
Okay, we are approaching the 1 hour mark, so I want to slowly just close it out.
So one I've seen come up a couple of times here, Dexter, and this last one they actually had you, and it says it should be a win if the opponent intentionally fouls in a losing position. That is a rule. That rule is already in existence. Losing position is defined from the top of the pin peg, top of the hand peg to the top of the pin pad is losing position. Any foul that takes place in that space is a loss. So that's ship to Ben win. Wow, did I butcher your name? We already have that rule. It's already in place.
Yeah.
Well, one question that Alex Kurtacha asked me, earlier today. He said, why couldn't we have this earlier in the day so Europeans can see it live? And I answered that, so I probably should answer that for everybody. And that is that for Bill and for Luke to make that work for their schedules, this was really the only time we could do that. So it wasn't so Europeans couldn't see it live. We do want that. In fact, Alex mentioned something else, that we should put this um, in subtitles in Russian. A lot of the Eastern Europeans, whether it's Georgia or Kazakhstan, can understand Russian. So do you want to address that, Dexter, if we can just do a little program to get that
Yes.
added?
So matter of fact, that was one of the great suggestion from Alex, and he spoke to me about it a couple, like 2 days ago, and that is something that we are actively trying to figure out on our end to try to make it local. That is what we call the localization process, where we don't only just take videos like these, but almost every video that we're pushing out that has significant educational meaning to it, we'll try to have that translated, at least to a certain degree. It will take a while to get the whole process smooth, because the last thing we want, right, it's to get something translated wrong and anger everybody, because sometimes it's just a matter of one word difference, and if it's translated wrong, could have bad ramifications. Like example, right? Well, if somebody says a cat, like, oh, that guy looks like a cat, but another word for a cat could be very insulting, right? So it's just one of those that we need to get a good system in place. It will take a little bit more time to release videos, but at the same time, I think it's good to have uh, the subtitles to bridge the cultures of the East and West a little bit, so they can understand what we are trying to achieve. And to them, I don't think anybody, you know, in the world would argue that transparency is a good thing. So yes, so we will start looking into how to get our stuff translated. Now, however, if any of you out there who's a native English and Russian speaker and would like to volunteer their time to help us review translational work, happy to have you on. If you could maybe send me an email at dexter@evwsports.com, we would love to have your services. So there's that. Uh, one question for me is, will you allow people to write in the EVW live stream chat without censorship? Uh, the rule right now that I made is that I'll allow people to hammer us, to critique us, so as long as it has some level of constructive criticism. So what that means is that if somebody's just like spamming and he's a troll and that adds nothing, and sometimes it's a positive thing, but it's still considered as spam, and it's like Devin's the best, Devin's the best, Devin's the best, or Levan's the best, Levan's the goat, and it adds nothing but clog up the whole conversation. I might put that person out on a timeout, right? Not necessarily ban that person, but I'll put a timeout. Uh, you know, if you are promoting pirated streams, you will be banned. If you're just being if you're just not adding to the whole wholesome conversation and calling people names without any restraint, then you will also be banned. Other than that, we'll,
So,
we'll keep censorship to a minimum.
yeah, so if somebody's saying, Robert's an idiot, that's okay. I actually want that. We'll leave it. But if they keep saying it over and over, is what Dexter's saying,
Yeah.
the same thing, Robert's an idiot, Robert's an idiot, we'll take out number one, number two, number three, number four. We'll leave number one. We don't want censorship. Censorship is not a good thing. EVW does not support it. We support transparency. We don't want to ban our fans. We don't want to ban or censor our fans. So in order to grow the sport, I believe we need to create more fans. We need to have our fans, their voices heard. If it's very vulgar language, I mean, we would delete that. And I think what Dexter and I have talked about this is we use mainstream other mainstream sports, which is where we're headed, their policies, if for censorship. I mean, so there are some things that we would censor or that we would delete, or people that we would ban, like Dexter says, we want to follow those standards for those mainstream sports. We don't want to make up something for ourselves and, but be very loose on that. I mean, we'd rather have more people commenting and more fans and athletes expressing themselves.
Right. Okay, so to put things more on a more positive note, Benji has a question. What's
Oh
Bill's
my
and
God.
Luke's favorite match you ever ref?
You know, man, I've refereed a lot of matches, and you know what's ironic is I don't remember a lot of the matches that I ref because I'm into the match more than the arm wrestler. But I would have to say, the one that just sticks in my mind is Levan and Ermis at KOT in Dubai. That was probably one of my favorite matches because things were changing in that fourth round very quick. So my favorite match, I would say Levan and Ermis from the KOT in Dubai. But that's just one of several matches that have been my favorite. But I would say that'd probably be the top.
Yeah,
Luke?
I don't know how I could dial in on a favorite. I would say that the hardest match I have ever refed was Giannis Omlins and Mindaugas Tersites. That was the most difficult match I've ever refed because it was reffing two master level chess players, and I was exhausted after that match. That was insane. And then probably I don't know that I can say it was my favorite because unfortunately John lost, but if in fact John's last match was with Yoshi Kanai in Texas, it was a true honor to be the referee that got to say go what could have been John's last match. I've had the opportunity to ref John many times. I've had the opportunity to know John as a friend, and I've had the opportunity to know what it's like to get pinned by John in competition. So having that honor of saying go in what potentially could be John's last match was very meaningful to me.
Okay, and who's your favorite arm wrestler to ref? Everybody's pausing because there's a lot of good one.
I'm telling you, as a referee, I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one because
Yeah.
if I'm refereeing that person and he wins, I don't want to be tarred and feathered.
Yeah, my
But
favorite
there,
arm
there's
wrestler to ref is the arm wrestler that puts his
yeah,
hand on the table, gets a grip, and sits there until we say go, and then congratulates the winner and walks away. That's my favorite arm wrestler to ref.
Now this is a question for Robert, really. Should refs be penalized in East vs West if they make a bad call by rotation? Keep seeing the same refs in each event. So it's really two questions in there. So and just to clarify everybody, right? I mean, Bill felt really horrible about the slight oversight. No, I mean his oversight during the Alex and Devon's match, and he even offered to, not, to not take his compensation for being the ref at the event. And obviously, it's not something that we'll accept. But that goes to show how much integrity Bill has.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Doug.
So obviously, yeah. So Bill's character's, unquestionable, and I obviously refused to accept his offer to have no compensation for that match because he felt it was a very bad call. Which, those things are done. Everybody makes mistakes, and Bill came forward before I did and actually said, "Hey, I made a really bad mistake here." Risto did the same thing, made a video. If it's just a small mistake, those are going to happen, and we're not going to say anything. I mean, there's nothing that needs to be said. What we want to do in this case is, um, in these two calls, the fouls and the declined humerus for an extended period. We want to really just identify, be transparent about it, take ownership of it, and then find solutions to hopefully keeping those those types of mistakes from happening again, or at least greatly minimizing the chance for those to happen again, which is really the purpose of the lessons learned meetings that we've had since with Bill um, and Luke and Hristo had already made his videos. There's really, I mean, I don't really believe in a penalty. It's more, what can we do to learn from this, guys, so that we can reduce those mistakes. Um, and Luke's, in this case, the head ref, and Luke's going to be implementing things. He already is, taking steps even without me saying anything. But I need to stay at arm's length, so I should not be the person dictating anything. All I've ever wanted to do, and this is with Ingen as well, when Ingen was doing this, is I've never dictated any rule or any, certainly not any kind of a punishment. Uh, and and it's really up to Ingen, or until Ingen gets, unless or until Ingen comes back, it'd be Luke's call. And I don't want to stand in anybody's way of doing their job. But the only thing that I would say that I think that I do have discretion over is helping to make the event watchable for the masses. Because I mean, our job, or my job, I feel like, with East versus West and EVW Sports, is to help streamline this so that it's watchable for a much greater audience. And because of our production issues, it actually went longer than normal. We certainly will correct all those issues and work on getting that down, to a more manageable time frame. One of the things that we can do also is have preliminary matches. We've got a footprint that works very well with UFC. It's already been proven. They can keep their matches down as far as the pay-per-view portion of it. But one of the ways that, the things that I asked Ingen, without telling, really what to do, just what we want to end up with is, more action, less downtime between rounds and between matches. And what he came up with is, let's go to a ref's grip right from the beginning. Just straight ref's grip. And we talked about it, and I thought, you know what? Why don't we start with a ref's grip, or excuse me, the opponents can get their grip, if they can, within 30 seconds. If the refs decide, you know what, it's not going to, this is not going to, ever get to a grip that the athletes can agree to, they have the discretion to go to ref's grip sooner. It's really ref's discretion. And so I advocated with Ingen to not go straight to ref's grip. Just look, first round, if they can't get to ref's grip, well then or they can't get to a fair grip, then it goes to ref's grips from that on. So anyway, that's my take, and but that's as far as I want to get involved with the rules, or with the reffing. It's really just a matter of getting us, this is what we're after. This is really the the end goal, and let's find a way to get us there without altering the the integrity of the sport, and the without having any kind of a bad impression from the more of the arm wrestling community, the arm wrestlers themselves. We want to make it fan friendly, but also arm wrestling friendly and for the arm wrestlers.
This is a pretty good one for any aspiring refs. Ray Romanowski has a question. He wants to know from Luke and Bill, what does it take to be a good ref?
Well, if you listen to people talk about our reffing after some of the matches we ref, we have no idea, evidently. No, I'm just kidding. But for me, I was blessed in the fact that the referees that took me under their wing to teach me to ref at the time that I started were all WAF master referees. I had Leonard Harkless, Keith Michelle, Gary Waddles, and Bob Koschel, rest in peace, were the 4 referees that I first refed with for a couple of years. After that, I think the next referee that I refed with out of that group was Mr. Collins right there. And whether they just realized that I was dumb enough to stay a referee, so they kept helping me, or they saw potential there and encouraged me, and I had a desire to get good at it. But what's it take to be a good ref? I think you have to want to be a good ref. You have to be willing to put in the time to get there. You have to be open to criticism and critique, and it's time under tension, guys. It takes a lot of time under tension to be able to walk onto a stage like East versus West in front of, I don't know how many people online, 1,200 people in the room that day, the best athletes on the planet, and all the cameras and the hot and the stress, and try to do that job well. It's just time under pressure. And then great men. I mean, like, I could not have gone back in time and picked better mentors than Bill, Leonard, Keith, Bob, and Gary when I was coming up. So
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Luke 100%. The mentoring, thick skin, table time. What I mean by table time is most good arm wrestlers aren't good arm wrestlers sitting on the couch. They have to have table time. It's no different than a referee. You got to have table time. Some of the suggestions I made for some of the refs that I've certified in my area is you go to these practices all the time. We got a lot of garage warriors. Be the referee for them, because the more you're at the table, the more proficient you're going to get. And, you almost have to widen your view on the table. A lot of the guys, when they referee, I see their face right up against the table where the hand peg is. You have to buy your lesson on that one, because I took one in the face from before I was too close to the table. A guy wrapped his leg. I took one in the groins before. I become the laughing stock. And after you get hit a couple times like that, you learn to back up. And as you back up away from the table, your view goes from a tunnel vision to a wider perspective. But I think Luke hit it on the head. If you've got somebody that could take you under your wing and show you the rope, show you the ins and outs, the tricks and tips, it doesn't take long. But, if you don't have that, definitely table time. Just like to become a good arm wrestler, you got to have table time.
the other thing I'd add is, in my opinion, a referee should really not have the desire, first and foremost, to be a part of the show. Like, there's no better compliment to me in the world than, boy, did you see that match between Robert and Dexter? And it was amazing. Who reffed that? If I'm forgotten, I did a perfect job.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know we've gone over an hour, which is what I have allocated for. Before I go to the last question, I would just like to, just tell everybody I'm doing this away from the official channel so that we can be set anywhere we want, to be in a more casual setting, and we can have a little bit more banter and disagreements, and in a more comfortable place rather than on the official channel. So if you'd like these kind of contents, please like and subscribe. And before I go to the last question, anybody has anything, Luke, Bill, Robert, do you guys have any last words to add before I go to the last question? Any comments?
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment. I touched on this earlier. even with the KOT in the early stages and EVW as it currently stands, you guys hire the best referees in the world to do our job. When we're hired to do our job, we do our job based off of what we have to work with. And what we have to work with is a set of rules. We're not influenced by anybody that hires us. We're not influenced by any of the competitors. We're not influenced by any of the referees. We know we got a job to do. It's our due diligence to do it effectively, efficiently, and professionally. We want everybody to have a fair match. That's why you guys hire the best. And when one of us falls short, we're at a level where we take it to heart. We take pride in what we do. And when we fall short on like what I did on Alex and Devin's match, it's not something that you could just easily get over. It's not for me. I take it personally. I'm hard on myself, but these guys are flying. These guys are spending time. These guys are taking time away from their family to get the best match possible. You guys are setting up the matches. You hire us to proctor it. And what I highly appreciate with the management on EVW and the KOT is once we put our stripes on, it's us. You guys are out of the picture. It's the referee that's doing their job. And if we fall doing our job, it's nobody else's fault but the referees. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I would just add that this is, I was truly a little apprehensive about this coming on today and being kind of opened up to the fans. I mean, as an arm wrestling referee, as any referee, you're scrutinized. Arm wrestling's a little bit more up close and personal. You've cornermen, your arm wrestlers, your fans, everybody is scrutinizing your every move. This was really good. I don't know of any other sport that opens up their refs to the fans like you guys did today. So I think that went really well. And for everybody out there that's on the live right now or that watches this later, you're never going to like every call we make, and we're never going to get it perfect. Understand we're doing our best, and you don't have to like me. You don't have to like Bill. You can want us replaced. You can think that we're just awful, but at least have the respect to understand that we're trying our very best to provide a very good atmosphere for the athletes, to provide you the entertainment that you're looking for.
Go.
Thanks, Luke. Bill. This is the last question, and I just like to round it up with something more positive. And I think it's pretty cool because I'm also curious myself. Why did you guys decide to be referees?
Well, I'll jump in that one first, Luke. What some might not know, I've been in this sport since 1979, a long time, and it wasn't diluted like it is now. And back in that day, we didn't have referees. I shouldn't say we didn't have referees. We didn't have any trained referees. And just seeing what was going on some of the competitions that I went to, which was fairs, basically the only events that I went to, I decided to volunteer to help the guy out because I seen he was struggling. And once I started to help him out, that's what kind of kickstarted me into the refereeing, the promoting, and seeing if I could do anything for this sport based off of what I've seen in the past.
Okay. So mine's a little different. I didn't decide to become a referee. I was told to. I was at an event. I went 2 and out when I probably shouldn't have. And Leonard walked over and said, "You're going to down ref for me today." And I went, what? And that was where I started reffing. And from there, anytime that I was at an event, Leonard had me ref with him. And then it evolved to a spot where I was good enough that they would bring me to an event somewhere else. They'd pay for my plane ticket or they'd pay for my hotel if I could get there. And it allowed me a way to be able to travel and get experience arm wrestling better people when I really couldn't afford it, starting my business and starting my family. Refereeing was an avenue for me to be able to afford travel in the sport. And it just turns out that I got okay at it. And here we are.
Great.
That's great.
Well,
So,
that's
what's,
Robert. Go ahead. Go ahead.
so yeah, I just wanted to thank both of you for coming on. Bill, Luke, appreciate you coming on and being, a little vulnerable, but transparent, because I think that's what we need, and that's what that's what the fans want, and also that's what the athletes want. So I appreciate you doing that, and Bill for volunteering to do that. I mean, I didn't ask you to. You were going to make a video like Christo. I didn't ask Christo to either, and so I appreciate Christo for doing that. So
Excellent.
thank you guys for agreeing to come on and really open up and just tell it like it is.
No. Thanks for being you guys.
Thanks, Luke, Bill. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, everybody who's watching. Remember to like and subscribe. See you ever, guys.
Hi, gentlemen.